Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Ite Namani.
I was in New York, living in Brooklyn. The temple was in Brooklyn on Henry Street. And I was coming every week and loving it. I loved the feast, I loved the kirtans, and I was hearing a little bit of philosophy every week, once a week on Sunday. And I liked it, but I didn't think I would join. Because when I first went to the temple, they convinced me to spend the night. I should say they coerced me to spend the night. They wouldn't take no for an answer. And I spent the night. I liked them, on the whole. I met them on the streets in 42nd Street or something. I went to the temple, they fed me prasadam and talked to me, one devotee talked to me. And then they asked me if I'd like to do some devotional service. And that was a combination of words I'd never heard before. Devotional service. So I asked, what is that? They say, do some service for Krishna. I said, sure. I thought, you fed me, I should reciprocate. So they took me outside in the backyard, and there was an old broken down fountain, a concrete fountain, big fountain, fill up this area. And it was cracked across the middle. And they said to me, we want to remove this fountain from here because it's not working. And we want to, this space, we want to have plays in the summertime out here in the backyard. It's grass, lawn. So they said, could you help us? And I said, sure. How? Then they had me a pickaxe. And I was young, I was 21, 20, And when you're that young, it's fun to destroy something, right? So I began swinging the pickaxe, and I swung that pickaxe all afternoon. I demolished that fountain into pieces that you could lift up and take away. And while I'm doing it, every now and then a different devotee would come by and see me working so hard, swinging the pickaxe. And they would say, Jai. And of course I didn't know what that meant. But afterwards I realized they were happy seeing me engaged like this. They probably all knew that it won't be long before he joins. So they convinced me to spend the night. When it was like 9 o'clock at night, I'm ready to go home. And they said, you don't have to go. You can spend the night. And I said, no, I got to go home. No, you don't. No, I have to go home. No, you don't. They were like this, I was living with just my mother alone in an apartment in Brooklyn. So when I see that they're not taking no for an answer, I said, let me call her. So they took me to the phone. I called my mother and I said, Ma, I'm not coming home tonight. She immediately gets worried because this is New York. I'm pretty new. I just got off the boat, you could say, She said, well, who are you going to spend the night with? I said, some friends, because I'm looking at the devotees and I'm thinking, how can I explain them to her? She wouldn't understand it. So I said, I'm staying with some friends. And she said, you have no friends. You just got here. I said, I got some friends. And she couldn't understand. She said, is it a girl? I said, no, Ma, it's not a girl. Then who is it? I said, I'll explain you in the morning when I come. Don't worry. I hope you're not doing any drugs. No, there's definitely no drugs here. So I spent the night. And then they came to wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And because I had never swung a pickaxe in my life, and I had been swinging it all afternoon, in the morning, my whole body was aching. Not just my hands, my legs too, because you use all the muscles when you're swinging a pickaxe, you know, even here, everywhere was in pain. And they wouldn't let me sleep. I'm like saying, hey guys, have a heart. I'm tired and I'm sore from swinging that pickaxe. They didn't want to hear that. You got to get up. So I made it up and I went downstairs and I got through the morning program. They gave me some beads, taught me how to chant. And I'm so tired, I would go sit down in the temple and lean up against the wall. And of course I would nod out, start nodding. And they would come over and say, get up. You can't see. Anyway, I made it through the morning, then they give me prasadam, breakfast, and I told them, okay, I'm going home, I gotta go. And when I left, I knew that I would come back to visit, but I knew I'm not gonna move in and live with them like the way they live. So then after a few months or something, I came to the Sunday feast, and they told me, Prabhupada's coming, he's at the airport. No, I didn't know who Prabhupada was. Everyone was always saying, Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said that. Every facet of life, Prabhupada said something about it. And that's how they lived, you know. And that, to a newcomer, an outsider, you noticed that and you thought, that's pretty a little odd. But anyway, he's coming. So I thought, well, I'll get a chance to see and hear him. So I went in the temple room and I sat close to the Vyasasan, so I can have a ringside seat. Like, if he's sitting there, I was there. And I thought, I'm going to sit here and nobody's going to move me, and I'll catch every word. And Prabhupada came and he spoke. And I was glued. I was just, when I left the temple that night, all I could think was, I'm going to have to join. All the reasons why I wasn't going to, they weren't so important anymore. You know, rising early, shaved heads, and all this stuff. Those were all reasons I was thinking why I wouldn't join. But when you hear Prabhupada, I was convinced. I thought, I'll probably never meet anyone like him again. My assessment of him was, he was the real deal, you know. He was so pure, so knowledgeable, and he had it all. He was a complete package. In his talk, his lecture, he made you laugh for a moment. He just explained. So then it took me a few months, maybe 2-3 months more, before I actually made up my mind, quit my job, moved in the temple. I remember the talk, all I remember of the talk, he was explaining what is a first-class man, second-class man, third-class man, fourth. I'd never heard anyone describe it, you know? And he said, this movement was trying to train up first-class men. That's all I remember, you know. of course he was probably quoting Sanskrit verses from Bhagavad Gita, Brahmins, but at that time those words were non-existent in my in my head. But I remember he was saying this. He would say, "This is a first-class man. Is he's clean. He's truthful. He's this and that." It was all very nice and attractive, and it made you want to be. Want to come up to that standard. And I thought, I'm not doing anything so significant with my life. Let me take the time and come and improve myself, And so the first person I told was my mother. I was living with my mother and my younger brother and younger sister. They had come to America after me. Maybe a few months after I came, they came. So when I told my mother, she wanted me to come to America to be with her. She was alone in New York. And really, I didn't even want to come. I mean, the island is, I was comfortable there. But she was lonely and I wanted to console her. So when I come to tell her now, look, and she never objected when I started going to the temple every Sunday. She raised me as a Catholic, but she never objected to me going to the temple. So, but when I came and I said, look, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to move into the temple. And she started crying. And I looked at her and I said, Ma, you're crying at the wrong time. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, when I was, before I met the devotees, I was doing all nonsense. I said, I was doing nonsense. Right? I was drinking, toking, whatever young people was doing in New York. I said, I was doing all nonsense, and you never cried. Now I'm getting my stuff together. I'm going to straighten up and fly right. I'm cleaning up my act, and I really want to go the distance. I want to move in the temple. To live with devotees and so I can get. I said, and now you're crying? I said, you're crying at the wrong time. And when I said it like that, she stopped crying. She couldn't argue with it. She later on she came around to appreciating, and not only appreciate, she actually became proud that I was a devotee. And if anybody at her church said anything bad about the Hare Krishnas, she would straighten them out and say, you don't know what you're talking about. My son is a devotee. And they're like, oh, okay. But the first day she was crying. Yeah. So, but Prabhupada was just so, I was attracted to him. When he sang, I think his singing was the biggest attraction for me. Apart from the philosophy, when he sang, I was like, he transported you to his world with such feeling. And he said, Jayarada, it's like, you never get tired of hearing him sing that. Because he really got into it. He entered that he would say, this song, Jayarada Madhava, he said, the whole spiritual world is in it. The residents, it glorifies the Jamuna, the cow, the the cowherd boy, the gopis, Krishna, Radha, everything. So, and that was easier for me to access, him singing. Not that I didn't enjoy his philosophical talks, but sometimes some of it would go over my head. But I would get something out of every time he came. The few times he came while I was in New York, and the few times he came when I was in LA, I mean, I loved it all. But his bhajans, after I became acquainted that there was recordings of him singing bhajan, well, I gravitated to those right away. I think Golden Avatar was putting them out, and I would be literally blown away by what he was doing. You know, it was so pure and sweet, you know, melodic. His harmonium playing, his singing. I don't think I've heard anyone play like him in all the years I've been at it. He had his own style. Srila Prabhupada came to the temple he came to the temple again, and after I had moved in. So I was a new devotee. A new devotee. I can't remember if I was initiated or not. I think I was probably initiated first. He was not physically present when I got first initiation, but he had a sannyasi, Rupanuga Prabhu, old devotee. He was in New York and he performed the fire sacrifice, gave me the beads, and he had the letter where Prabhupada is saying, I'm accepting these people. It was a bunch of us. And, you know, I was happy. But I was just first initiated and Prabhupada comes to the temple. And he was coming. And the president told us, Prabhupada's coming tomorrow. And we're all going to the airport to meet him. Everybody's going to the airport to meet him. So it'd be like a festival. You know, in those days, this is long before 9/11, you'd go all the way up to the gate. So when the president made that announcement, he motioned for me to come. And he told me, he said, everyone's going to the airport to meet Prabhupada except you. Oh, I was like, how could you? And why me? He says, somebody's got to stay back to guard the deities. Because we used to have problems with the neighbors. We were the temple was situated in an Italian Puerto Rican neighborhood. And the young guys were always taunting the devotees. Sometimes they would throw things at us when we were going out to go on Harinam or something. You know, they were always giving us problems. So the president felt somebody's got to stay back and guard the temple, the deities, while everyone goes to the airport. And he chose me to stay back. And I'm like, how could he? Doesn't he know how much I want to go? He knew everybody wants to go, but he chose me to stay back. And that was like the first surrender that I had to do. I really didn't want to. I wanted more than anything to go with the devotees and greet Srila Prabhupada at the airport. So the next morning when they're all getting ready to go, they're all loading into the cars, you know, maybe 50, 60 devotees are going, and I have to stay back. I'm struggling with that idea. I'm struggling with that idea. And I began to think, maybe I'll watch out the front door and make sure when the president gets in his car and goes, I'll run out and go in one of the other cars and go. But as I began to think about that, and I thought, as I began to think about it, I realized it's not a good idea. Because what if while I go, what if the neighbors seeing all the devotees going, what if they came and desecrated the temple? Because I was reading Bhagavatam at that time, and you would hear how these demons would go and desecrate the sacrificial arenas and pass stool and all this thing. My mind, I was thinking, they could come and do all of that. And I began to think further, and what if, while I'm out there enjoying, what if Prabhupada his car gets to the temple first, because they'll pick him up at the curb, and his car will reach the temple first. Everybody else has to go to the parking lot and find it. They'll be 5 to 10 minutes later. I say, and what if Prabhupada comes in the temple room, opens the door, and there's stool and urine on the ground, and he says, what is this? All this is going on in my mind. And I said, so I'm thinking, Prabhupada's asking the president, what is this? And the president said, it must be the neighbors. And then Prabhupada would ask, well, why didn't you leave somebody behind to watch the temple? And the president would say, I did, Srila Prabhupada, I left somebody behind. And Prabhupada would say, and where is that rascal? Meaning me. So I knew at that point, I can't go. I have to surrender and stay and man my spot, man my station. So they all went. But by surrendering there, I was rewarded, because just as I figured, Prabhupada's car arrived first, maybe 10 minutes before any other car. And I'm in the temple just walking back and forth, chanting japa, Radha Govinda's at the altar. And suddenly the door, the front door to the temple opens, and Prabhupada walks in alone. I couldn't believe it. So I immediately, dandavats, I fell on the ground. And he got up and he walked slowly, come up front, stand in front taking darshan of Radha Govinda. And I'm just watching him. I'd never been, and I'm alone with him in the temple room. That's in itself, kind of unique. He walks back up and he goes and he sits on the Vyasasana. And as soon as he sits down, the other people who were in the car with him was the president of the temple, Prabhupada's servant, Shruti Kirti, and two sannyasis, Kirtananda Swami, and I can't remember who the other one was. Well, what happened was the president had brought all of them into the pujari room and given them something to do. So they all four come walking out. Somebody's got a pitcher with water and a basin. Someone's got a towel to dry his feet. Someone's got an archi tray. Someone's got a garland. And they came and Prabhupada's sitting down there, and he puts his foot out. So they're going to start the process of receiving him. I'd never seen that ceremony before. So I stood up nearby and I'm watching what's going to happen. And I realized they're going to wash his feet. So just as they began, the temple president, he was in front of me. He turned around and he said, don't just stand there, chant. Oh, okay. So I ran and I got a mridanga and I started singing. I came back and I'm this close to Prabhupada and I'm singing Sri Guru Charana Padma. And while I'm singing it, I'm glued on to Prabhupada he began responding. I sing a line and he repeats it, he responds. I couldn't hear anybody else. I don't even know if anybody, one of the other four was chanting. All I'm seeing is I'm watching Prabhupada and he's chanting, responding. And this way I did the whole song. And I'm thinking, if I had abandoned my spot and gone in the car, I would have never got this. And this was priceless. So I learned something there, that you do your duty. It was my duty to stay. You can't just whimsically abandon your duty. And then, just as I'm getting to the end of the song, the last verse, the other cars arrived. And they're right outside the Prabhupada's Vyasasans. In the back of the temple room, there's windows, and behind those windows is the pavement, the street. So we're up there, and you could hear all the cars screeching and doors slamming. And then next thing you know, the door bangs open and all the devotees rushed in with badangas and everything, you know, Jai Sachinandan and a bunch of others, you know. And they were like shocked because there I was leading the kirtan for Prabhupada. There wasn't even a kartal player. And they just like, for a second there, and then they joined me. They joined me, and then I picked up the tempo of the kirtan, and we had a big kirtan, you know, like a rip-roaring kirtan for Prabhupada. And it was just wonderful. That was my first time chanting for Prabhupada. Prabhupada was at that time translating the 6th canto. And he was in this section with Ajamil. Now, of course, nobody had a book yet on the 6th canto. It hadn't come out yet. He's working on it. But Prabhupada's part of his entourage, who he traveled with, apart from his servant, who was Shrutikirti, I think, he had this boy named Nitai. Prabhupada had 2 Sanskrit assistants, Pradyumna and Nitai, and they were both grihastas. They both had a child, so they couldn't do it all the time. They would take, one would go for a few months, and the other one would come and replace him, and he'd go back and spend, and then in this way it was a nice system. So this time Nitai was the Sanskrit assistant. So he wrote the verse on the chalkboard so that we could all respond and chant it, you know, as Prabhupada taught. And Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana. And then after a while, men and women had chanted, Prabhupada told them translation. So he's the only one that has the translation because it's in manuscript form, you know. Prabhupada, he would get the tapes from Prabhupada's dictaphone and transcribe what Prabhupada had translated the night before. Then when they get that, they would then send that to the BBT. And this is how the process of making a book would evolve. So Prabhupada tells him, read the translation, and he has these papers. And he begins to read the translation to that one verse. And it is the part of the Bhagavatam when Ajamil sees the Yamadutas coming for him. So I'll paraphrase it because I don't know the exact thing, but in essence, you know, he's reading the translation. Ajamil seeing these Yamadutas, fierce-looking creatures, in fear, he calls out for his son. And he calls out for his son and he says, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. We didn't think anything of it. It sounded appropriate. But Prabhupada caught it. And Prabhupada took the microphone and he said, did I say 3 times? And we realized Prabhupada's talking to Nitai, who is sitting down there from the other. Prabhupada said, did I say 3 times? And Nitai wouldn't answer. He just kind of bowing his head and he's not saying anything. Prabhupada asked him again, a second time, did I say 3 times? He's still not answering. And we realize there's something wrong here, something going on, but we don't know what it is. And then Prabhupada leaned back in his Vyasasana and he says, I did not say 3 times. So this is the 3rd time. At that point, Nitai confesses. He says, no, Prabhupada, you didn't say 3 times. And then Prabhupada said the most wonderful thing. He leaned forward in the Vyasasana and he said, why 3 times? Once is sufficient. And when he did that, his hand was like a mudra. Once is sufficient. The whole temple erupted. Hari Bol! He said it with such potency and conviction that, once is sufficient. Once chanting. He said, why 3 times? And the whole thing made sense. And then Prabhupada showed a side of compassion, a side of him which is compassionate. He could have ripped into Nitai and blasted him, but he didn't. He just said, don't change anything that I have written. And that's all. And he went back and sat back and he gave the Bhagavatam class. And it was all about the glories of chanting the holy name. But that little incident there, I'll never forget it because it was a teaching moment, So after class, there was a bunch of us, all boys from New York. We were going, about maybe 8 of us or something. We're going over to the house where Prabhupada stayed. It's the president's quarters, a little house on the street. And we went over there, and Harikesh, at that time, he was not sannyasi yet. He was brahmachari. But he began traveling with Prabhupada. He had been in the New York temple, and he was training 4 of us brahmacharis how to cook. And eventually, out of the 4, the other 3 voted that I should be the head cook in New York, and I became. But I was not Brahmin. So now to make it all right, they sent me to get initiation. So we went over there, and Harikesh was waiting for us outside, like on the porch, on the walkaway. And we had to take our shirts off. And he said, he's going to teach us how to count from 1 to 10. And he said, this is very important. Don't mess up this. And he's teaching us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, And it seemed like a fairly easy thing to do. He said, practice it before you go in. So we were all outside on the porch, practicing counting. It's 1 to 10. I mean, we think, how could anything go wrong? The first devotee to go in, front of the line, one of my godbrothers, he goes in, and in like 2 minutes, he comes out looking like he'd seen a ghost. This is funny, but it's at the same time. He comes out like this, like he'd seen a ghost. Nice devotee. His name is Pankajanabha. It means lotus navel, a nice name of Krishna. He comes out like he's seen, and we all said, what's wrong? And he said, Prabhupada called me a mudha and told me to get out. Well, we just like, we can't believe it. Why? He says, I got into Prabhupada's presence and I couldn't count from 1 to 10. Simple thing, huh? But I understood he was mesmerized by the presence of Prabhupada. Prabhupada's presence was powerful. You know, it's what I remember when I tell this story, I tell the devotees, it's like when Krishna went to Vidura's house and Vidura wasn't home, and the wife invited Krishna in, and Krishna says, I'm hungry. You have any prasadam? And she said, no, everything's gone, we washed the pots already. And then Krishna says, I see you have some bananas over there, I'll take some bananas. So Vidura's wife got the bananas, and she's so enamored, you know, with Krishna's presence. You know, Krishna is coming in your house. It's just you and him. That's enough to, you know. So what she's doing is, she starts, rather than just handing him the bananas, she takes one and she starts peeling the bananas, and in her ecstasy and bewilderment, she throws the banana away in the trash and gives Krishna the peel. And just at that moment, Narad Muni and Vidura walks in, and they start laughing, seeing this happening. And Vidura says, look at my wife. She's peeling the bananas, throwing the banana away and giving Krishna the peel. Isn't that amazing? And Narad Muni said, what's even more amazing is Krishna is actually eating the peels. So this devotee, he couldn't do a simple thing like chant 1 to 10. And Prabhupada tell him, you're just a mudha, get out. So he comes out, he's about to die. And Harika said, don't worry, go to the end of the line and you'll go back in at the end, you'll get another try. So everybody was like, we were nervous. If that could happen to him, it could happen to me. And I went in, I was like the 4th person going in, and paid my obeisances, I sat down close to Prabhupada, and he's on a mat on the floor. And the first thing he asked me is, do you know how to count from 1 to 10? And I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, you do it like this. And he begins to show me how to count. He goes 1, 2, 3, 4. When he gets to 5, he knew that I wasn't paying attention. And I wasn't. I stopped looking at his hands. He's showing me, but I'm fascinated by being so close to Prabhupada. I'm looking at his head, at his ears with the hair coming out of his ears. I'm enjoying looking at him. And he knew it, because all of a sudden when he got to like 5, he said, look here. He just grounded me. I looked, and he finished it, and he said, now you do it. And I did it. And I came out of there. Then he told me to come close, and he chanted the mantra in my ears, and then he took the thread and he just kind of threw it over me like a lasso, you know. And I paid my businesses and come out. So that's Philadelphia. I came to LA in '74. I left New York. The winters were too much for me, because I'm from the islands, you know, and it was just a little too much for me to tolerate that cold. So I came here, and it's considerably warmer than the East Coast. And when I came here, sometime shortly after I arrived, Tulsidas was the president. And he announced in the morning that Prabhupada's coming to the airport. He didn't tell me to stay back. He called me and he said, Prabhupada's coming and I want you to lead the Kirtan for Prabhupada. So that was like my heart's desire. So we all went in a big group, bigger group than New York, because this is New Dwarka. We went to the airport, and I was meditating on what I would do when Prabhupada, when I first see him, when he comes through the gate. So I thought I would begin singing his pranam mantras, Namo Vishnu Padaya, and then I would chant Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. And then I began to think of what melody of Hare Krishna I should chant. And I wanted to please him. Now, in those days, we didn't know so many melodies. Maybe half a dozen was as much as everybody else knew. We would just rotate these, on Harinam or in the temple. So, but I remembered at that time, I thought of one of the melodies that everybody was singing. This particular melody, one brahmachari had told me that this melody, Prabhupada had given it to the devotees and told them that this was one of BHAKTISIDDHANTA'S, Saraswati Thakur's, one of his favorite melodies. So at that moment I remembered being told that. And I thought, well, I don't know, I never heard anyone say this is Prabhupada's favorite melody. I didn't have a favorite melody that Prabhupada liked. But they say this one was BHAKTISIDDHANTA'S favorite. So I thought, I'll sing this one, and he would like that. He'd be pleased, because it's his guru, So I had it all fixed in my mind what I'm going to do while we're waiting, And as Prabhupada comes through the gate, the devotees, they made an aisle for him to come through. And they put garlands, they had so many garlands. He was wearing probably 6 or 8 garlands. And they had flower petals, everybody was throwing flower petals on the pathway. And I started chanting the pranam mantra. And just as Prabhupada's passing me, I'm chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. And as he passes me, I got behind him. Well, the whole crowd, as he passes, everybody just gets behind and they're escorting him out. Right? We're going out now to go to the sidewalk with the car. It's a good ways. So as I get behind him, I'm ready to chant the Mahamantra. And that melody, in my mind I'm thinking, he's going to like this because it's one of BHAKTISIDDHANTA's favorite. So I started to sing it, that melody. And before I didn't even finish it, I got halfway through it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Before I started the Hare Rama, Prabhupada stopped, and he's about 3 feet in front of me. Prabhupada stopped with his cane, and he turned around, and he looked at me straight in my face, looked at his eyes, and he gave me a smile, and he did his head like this, come on. And he turned around and he continued walking. And other devotees saw it too. I wasn't the only one who saw it, because I remember Danavir, at that time, he wasn't a sannyasi yet, he was resident of Dwarka, New Dwarka. he ran over to me and he said, "Did you see that?" I said, "Of course I saw it." He's right, it was for me. And but when he did that, everyone leaped in the air. It was a moment, just a moment. Some devotees tell me that Prabhupada's really approving of your chanting. This is your service. So I took it seriously like that, and I continued to chant for his pleasure. I would say to the devotees, I don't chant. I never chant to become popular or for fame or anything. That came as a byproduct. I was chanting to please him and to please the devotees, the Vaishnavas. But that came. And still to this day, I just chant for his pleasure. Anyway, for those of you who want to know what that melody was, as I said, it was one of a few melodies, maybe 5 or 6 melodies that we were all chanting in ISKCON during Prabhupada's time. It's different. And so this particular melody, which I was told that is one of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's favorite. He liked this melody. And the melody went like this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The quality that Prabhupada exhibited that impressed me most readily was his compassion, his compassionate nature. I saw how he would look at compassionately to how he dealt with some of his disciples who had strayed, fallen away, and they come back, and he would receive them with love and compassion. We had never seen that. In fact, just to illustrate, I remember one little incident. I had gone to San Francisco from New Dwarka. It was the first Rath Yatra I had been to, the first real Rath Yatra. Because in New York, they used to have a little mini festival in Central Park. But when I came to New Dwarka, they weren't having Rath Yatras in LA. But San Francisco would have the big Rath Yatra at Golden Gate Park. And the whole community would go down to San Francisco in caravan, and the bus, and cars, and everything. And we got there the day before Rath Yatra, and that evening, Prabhupada was coming into San Francisco airport. And a bunch of devotees went to the airport to greet him. As I said, Prabhupada coming into an airport, that meant a festival. There'd be kirtan, everything. And I was there. At that time, I was leading the kirtans. I don't know who was, somebody else was. But there were sannyasis, Vishnu Jan Maharaj was there. There were many people who were there. And as Prabhupada was making his way through the crowd, through the aisle, suddenly he stopped. And he looked to his right, he looked across the room, in the airport. He looked across, and I was on his left side, and I tried to follow his gaze, wonder, what's he looking at? And I traced it, and he was looking at one young man. I didn't realize that that young man was a devotee, was a disciple of Prabhupada. He was a young man with hair, and he had come out. He had heard from the other devotees, Prabhupada's going to be here, and he came to see him. Prabhupada stopped and looked at him. And he just stopped walking. And his look was just eyes of compassion and love. And he stretched out his hand and he said, he did like this, motioning for him to come. And that boy came and he walked through the line, and Prabhupada took off one of his garlands. He had many. And he put it around him. And the exchange was one of love. It was so real, you know, Prabhupada had affection. And this boy had left maybe years before. But Prabhupada was so happy to see him. And he gave him the garland, and then he continued walking. So that was a little thing, but seeing that compassion and that affection in action, that was touching, you know. So that's something he always, you know, we read that the Vaishnavas are, you know, full of compassion. He doesn't even want to see, you know, he doesn't want to see an animal being hurt or killed. What to speak of a devotee or a disciple? He was so compassionate.
Anilo Premadana